Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla. Today I'm on the Kawasaki Z900RS. That's my office for the day, and I gotta say I'm feeling particularly lucky. I had a lot of personal interest in this bike, and I think a lot of our viewers and readers are really interested in this bike. I'm feeling pretty lucky that I'm the guy out here. I got picked to do this press event, and the Z900RS is really making me a happy man. This bike is very similar to a big bore standard from Japan. It's exactly what you would expect. It's a remarkably satisfying and capable motorcycle. There's nothing here that strays too far off the beaten path. Now, when I came here, the thing that I wanted to find out most of all is what's up with the price difference? Like, what is my extra money gonna get me if I buy one of these? And when I say that, I'm comparing it to the Z900, of course. Depending on which flavor of the Z900 you're comparing to which flavor of the RS, there's about a $2,500 price difference there, which is pretty significant, and I wanted to know if Kawasaki could justify that. And after their tech briefing and after riding this bike, I gotta say I think they actually can. Even though they're very alike, they are very different. Starts with the frame. The Z900RS has a different frame than the Z900. If you look at the tail section on a Z900, it's got that really aggressive sort of tail that sticks way up in the air. I think it would be impossible to do sort of a more classically styled flat seat bike like the Z900RS on that frame, so that's a difference right there. The powertrain of these bikes are really different. So the Z900RS is tuned for low-end, mid-range power. But the whole idea is take all the power this bike has to offer and move it farther down in the rev range, and I think Kawasaki's done a wonderful job doing that. I mean, they lower the compression a little bit. This bike also has a little less duration in the cams, exhaust and intake, classic steps to move where the power comes on in a motorcycle. And the other thing they did too in the drivetrain was they changed some of the transmission gearing ratio. So first is actually a little lower than the Z900 in this bike, and sixth is actually a little bit taller. So you have a shorter first, letting you get off the line nice and hard, but sixth is a little bit more relaxed. It makes cruising just a little bit, more mellow on the Z900RS. And I'll tell you, it absolutely works. Now, there's other differences, of course, in this bike, too. The first is traction control. I thought that was a big addition right there. So we've got two-level traction control here. To be perfectly frank, I've only left it on level 1. Level 1 allows like a nice, good, solid 10, 12-inch wheelie. It'll let you play around and goof around, but not too much. So, as opposed to Z900, of course, there's just no traction control at all on there. Now, there's some other differences, too. Look at the suspension. Now, the rear on the suspension is either very similar to or exactly the same as the Z900, adjustable preload, adjustable rebound. However, on the front end of this bike, things change a little bit. In addition to the Z900's adjustable preload and rebound, you've also got compression damping now up front. I think that's a nice addition. I have not had the chance to play around with it too much. We were kind of cramped for time on this press launch, so I didn't beat it up too badly, but I was able to get the Z900 right where I liked it, and I'm certain that a more adjustable suspension on the Z900RS would yield me even better results. So I think that's a big upgrade. Look at the front brakes, too. Another big difference there I think a lot of people overlook very quickly. Instead of having the conventionally mounted dual discs that you see on the Z900, the Z900RS is wearing a set of radial mount calipers. I think that's a pretty good thing. I will say the feel's not quite to my liking. They're a little bit wooden. I'm not getting all the feel I wanted out of these brakes. I think a set of stainless lines would really cure that, but again, not a huge problem. And again, most owners are going to want to throw some stuff onto this bike. Moving back to differences between the Z900, one of the things I thought was most interesting is the exhaust on this bike. So the exhaust is actually a stainless exhaust. It's polished twice. It's polished before it's welded, and then it's polished again after it's welded. And I think there may even be a third finish polish on here too. But it's a phenomenally interesting exhaust too, because firstly, the muffler is different on this. Kawasaki has actually tuned the exhaust for sound. First time they've ever done that, which is really surprising to me. I thought they would have been into that a lot earlier, but that's not the case. But they lowered that muffler, got it a little farther back, and mercifully they cured a big problem Spurgeon and I had on the Z900, was that our foot kept smashing into the muffler. Happily, this new exhaust, they've rectified that problem on the RS. I'm really happy to see that. And then one of the other things I think is really nifty is the headers on this particular bike are actually not just stainless, but they're also dual tube. It's tube within a tube. The idea there being to keep the headers looking really nice. They spent all that time polishing them out, and by using a dual tube header, a header within a header effectively, it leaves a little air pocket between the pipes, so the pipes stay looking nice for a really long time. Given that the owner of this bike is probably going to be very fastidious about maintenance and keeping it looking nice, I thought that was a really big value add there. So some of the differences between these bikes are pretty noticeable, I think. Another big one too is the gauges. This thing has analog gauges on it. I love analog clocks. I know a lot of other people agree with me on that. They're just, to me, very easy to read. I can look down, very quickly and get a lot of information at a glance. Another difference too is the headlight. This thing has an LED headlight, looks super great, really modern. I can't tell you how it works. I haven't had this bike at night at all. Still though, I'm expecting it's probably significantly better than a halogen. So I've compared this quite a bit against the Z900, but if you haven't ridden a Z900 or if you're looking at some other bikes, that's not necessarily a helpful comparison. Let's vet this out against some of the other retro bikes on the market. I'm going to call them standards or retros, whatever you want to refer to them as. And for me, the Kawasaki rings in as a Goldilocks bike, really for two reasons. It's in the middle as far as price is concerned. There's other more expensive bikes out there. There's the Thruxton R, there's the BMW R9T, the flagship there. Those are really expensive. But there's also cheaper stuff too. Look at some of the Triumph Modern Classics. Check out that new Royal Enfield just rolled out. That thing's going to be super cheap. So for me, this bike is very much in the middle with price, and I think it's very in line with what people will be willing to pay for a motorcycle of this caliber. But the other thing they're shooting the middle on for me, and this I'm going to get totally subjective here, is on the styling. Down at one end, you have bikes that truly just look really, really old. Those Royal Enfields we just discussed earlier, really old. The first generation of Triumph Modern Classics, those bikes, oh my gosh, they are, I think for a lot of people, dead ringers for an early Triumph. But then at the other end of the spectrum, you have some bikes that are claiming to be retro that I think look very futuristic. I'm thinking specifically right now like a Yamaha XSR. Great bike, but to me that's a totally modern motorcycle. I don't see very much old bike in that except for the round headlight. Kawasaki, I think, really has taken the Z900, and this is a bike to me that looks like a nice new modern motorcycle. Nobody is going to mistake this for an old bike, but you look at it and it's instantly apparent what they were shooting for here. I like that. I think that's probably where most people want to be, is somewhere in the middle. They don't want a direct copy. Instead, they just want a bike that gives them that feeling, that sort of evokes that earlier bike without having all the same problems and without trying to necessarily ape it. So I think Kawasaki's done a great job with this bike. I had very, very minor complaints in my short time on this bike. You can check some of those out in my Common Tread article. Subscribe to us on YouTube so you can check other videos we're cranking out here. I'm Lem. I have Canyons and a Z900RS, so I'm out of here.